So most of this is based upon my values of making certain that whatever we do is fair and it's predictive. And so you take something like remote work. If one of the requirements of a job is going to be that the person is going to have to work remotely, first of all, that has to be included in the job analysis. We have to look at the job analysis and find out, is there going to be any remote work? Is it all remote work, or is it just some remote work? And then we look at the people who have succeeded in both of those areas, because they're quite a bit different. Being alone all of the time versus being alone and being in the office, those are quite different. And it varies by community, it varies by many different things, the resources of the person. But for the most part, those who work all remote tend to be, I say it, that fit well, who succeed, tend to be less agreeable. And the reason that they succeed and the agreeableness has anything to do with it is because if you're working from home all of the time and you have children, you have friends, you have any of those things in your life, and you're a really nice person, then your agreeableness is going to distract you and make it difficult to work from home. Whereas if you're in the office part of the time, then that agreeableness factor doesn't get quite as much in the way, because you can feed that. Extroversion is the same way. You notice that people who are lower on extroversion tend to be more successful in an all remote position, whereas if they're going to at least get to see their colleagues in the office part of the time, then their extroversion gets fed. Conscientiousness is another important factor, that if you work from remotely all of the time, then you have to be quite conscientious, because you're going to have to make certain that you take care of all the details yourself. You have to follow the rules yourself. There's no, no one there as an office mate or your boss you see every day or whatever, who is going to make certain that you follow the rules. So the people who succeed in some remote work typically don't need as much conscientiousness as those who are working remotely all of the time. Drive is an interesting piece, because when you put people into remote work and they're on their own, if they have a lot of drive, they're liable to wander off and leave. They may go find something else to do just because of all the drive they have. Now, if they're in the office part of the time, then you've got more control over that. That drive has some parameters around it. But it's just something you have to have quite a bit of motivation if you're going to work from home as well. I mean, that the bottom line of that, the lower threshold, the floor, if someone is not driven at all, then they're probably not going to succeed working on their own. Openness is an interesting thing. Everyone believes today that everyone should be flexible and adaptable. Well, perhaps to a point. I mean, if you're working from home, really you don't have that much openness. I mean, maybe you get to decide what time you're going to work or something like that, but you want the person to do what it is they have to do, but be open enough to know that they have to do it from home. Whereas if they're going to do both, then I think that requires even more openness. I mean, our data show that someone who has to work one place one day and someplace else the next, they're going to have more openness to experience. Sensibility is a huge one for remote workers. It taps into neuroticism, and if someone is not sensible, they're going to lack trustworthiness. They're going to fly off of the handle more. They're going to have issues that are more difficult for them to control, because they are at home all alone and nobody can see, hey, let's go have a cup of coffee. Let's, that last customer was a really disturbing call, and let's take a break now. And when the person is at home, I mean, an example of this was when I was managing remote workers in another company, and I would get laptops that had been flung across the room, and it was obvious that they were broken and taped up with duct tape. And I'm thinking back, wow, that person was really having a struggle. They were working there all alone in their basement, and when things went wrong, they really had a hard time dealing with that. I think, the intelligence factors, it really depends on the job, but those who have more strategic intelligence just tend to do better at any kind of remote work. I mean, it just requires planning your day better. It requires planning transportation better, a lot of things than if you get to work in an office all of the time.
Yeah.
So these are somewhat generalizations, and there are certain situations, and I think that anyone can succeed in all remote work or some remote work. But when you're looking at someone's behaviors and trying to figure out why they are succeeding or not, one thing to do is to think about it in these terms that, well, the reason that you're having trouble focusing on the job is because you're so nice to everyone all the time that whenever your kids want to go play, you don't have it in you to say no.